Welcome to episode 1 of the Mountain Mantras Wellness and Life Lessons podcast. I'm your host, Kathryn Kemp Guylay. For our very first episode, I thought I'd let you hear me in the hot seat as I'm interviewed on live radio by the lovely radio DJ Cindy Dufour of KDPI Ketchum FM Radio. This interview will give you some insights into our family's move from Chicago to Sun Valley, Idaho, where we currently live. You'll hear about my fears. Biking with all the elite athletes in our mountain town is one of them. You'll hear some of my sometimes bizarre but effective strategies for wellness and success. And don't miss me tell the guacamole on Wall Street story. Cindy was just way too kind and complimentary in this interview. Don't think I'm perfect, for sure. If you're intrigued by what you hear, come on over to KathrynGuylay.com, KathrynGuylay.com, and you can get your free 7-day happiness and productivity challenge and stay in touch. Thanks for listening. Now let's get on with the show.
So thrilled to have Kathryn Guylay here today. Hi, Kathryn.
I'm so excited to be on your show. You're just such a great host.
Oh, you're so nice. Well, that's a huge compliment coming from you, a great host as well. Kathryn has her own show. Tell us about it.
So it's Healthy Kids Corner. It's every other Tuesday at noon.
Right here at KDPI.
Yes, and we've got Kat Vanden Heuvel from the Sawtooth Botanic Gardens. She will be on next Tuesday. And I have to tell you, the last guest I had, it was Rebecca Rush. It was so much fun.
Nice.
But guess what ended up happening? I went on her ride because I got so inspired by her ride story that I said, okay, we're just going to sign up. And so I did that 56-mile ride over Trail Creek.
We're talking about the great mountain bike extraordinaire elite athlete, Rebecca Rush.
Yes, she's
and so
amazing.
Tell about that ride. What is it? Everyone knows about it but me because I wouldn't touch it. But go ahead and tell. I do a little mountain biking, but I don't know if I'm ready for this.
So I'll do a plug for next year's ride. It's Rebecca's Private Idaho.
Right.
And what she does is she brings in about 500 riders from across the country, and she gets all this music and vendors, and it's a big party. So she is very intimidating because she's so incredible in her athlete and prowess, but she's also a really nice, down-to-person, down to earth valley resident that really wants to show the rest of the world how beautiful this place is. So she calls it Rebecca's Private Idaho, and she wants to treat people that come into town, like kings and queens. So you do the ride. After you're done, there's a party. People wash your bike.
Oh my goodness!
It's
and
really
how did
amazing.
you feel after? You're such a good athlete, and you're in such great shape. I have to say, we're going to have cameras here at KDPI eventually for streaming live at our website at kdpifm.org, which is really exciting, but we don't have them today and not yet. But if we did, and I'll try to describe Kathryn for you, just looking at her, I'll be the camera for you, radio listeners, but she is so beautiful. She is so fit. She is a girl she's a woman who looks maybe like a 20-year-old girl, really amazingly gorgeous and glowing. A beautiful wife and mother of 2. Very, very special family. I happen to know them quite well personally. And so, Kathryn, just by looking at your glowing face, I know how healthy you are. From reading your book, I really know now.
And right back at you, Cindy.
Oh, I don't know
about
that.
You have 3 kids.
Okay, so that's the only difference? I don't know about that. We're going to get into the disciplined Kathryn Guylay, both disciplined enough to write this wonderful book that we're going to be talking about a lot today, Mountain Mantras, and also your fitness and your diet, your nutrition. And I know you're a nutritional expert. We're going to get into all that. But looking at what you did riding that many miles in the mountains with Rebecca Rush and her team and her group, how did you do? Are you an elite athlete yourself? Do you have a really huge athletic background?
Absolutely not. I want to be very clear about that. And it's interesting because it was scary to write a book about skiing, knowing that there was a time truly where I was the worst skier on the mountain. I learned how to ski as an adult, and part of what this book is about overcoming extreme fear. And how do we do that? Because when you're learning how to ski as an adult, it is a great, I call it an accelerated classroom, because you're up there, especially when you're intellectualizing it, which is what I was doing it, learning how to ski. It's like, it's not as visceral as when you're a kid.
Right.
And so you're really thinking about it. And so I'm not an elite athlete. I'm not a great skier or a great biker or great runner. I participate in all those things. And I think what I do with all of those things is I sort of bring in all the different parts of my life, being an ex-management consultant, being a nutritional counselor, and then saying, how does this all tie together? Because people, they want to learn about leadership skills and they want to learn about healthy nutrition, but they want it to be in a fun way. They want to learn in a fun and memorable way. And I think that sports, and especially the stories from people like Rebecca Rusch and from the Olympians that are in this book, it's very, very memorable because their stories are so inspirational and they are chasing their dreams and catching them. Not to say that, I'm catching my dreams on the mountain, being the fastest or best skier, but I was able to kind of look at the mountain and say, hey, every time you plant your pole, you're setting an intention. You're setting a goal, and you're not just doing it once, you're doing it over and over and over every time you turn. And so it just became this sort of moving meditation where I started to put so much together in what I thought was a very, disparate set of circumstances in my life. They all came together on the mountain.
Okay, but your athletic background then we know isn't skiing, and you mentioned running, but are you a lifetime runner?
I have been running since I was 14. So I
knew it.
I was on the cross-country team, and that's another thing that I have in common with Rebecca Rusch, is we both are from the suburbs of Chicago, which is crazy. We grew up, we're similar ages, similar, backgrounds in terms of where we grew up, both on cross-country. I'm sure I was never around her in terms of the finish line. But
she was a cross-country runner as well.
Yes.
From Chicago.
From the suburbs of Chicago. Isn't that crazy? And we're both here in Ketchum. But I have used running truly as a way to survive. It is one of my survival techniques. So
to unwind and all of those things. And we're going to get into this because I want to hear about your past careers and just that high octane kind of lifestyle in Chicago. I've read about in your book now, Mountain Mantras, about you and Jeff, your husband, living in Chicago and living that crazy lifestyle. Jeffrey being a trader, right?
He's an investment banker, so he's in mergers and acquisitions, but it is life on Wall Street. Yeah, right. It's pretty crazy.
And the craziness of it. So running has been something that you've used your entire life practically to decompress.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting. So a very thoughtful person. So back to just vanity for 1 minute and looking at just the outside woman, and we're going to get into your thinking and the inside woman here today. But just again, let's go vain, let's go superficial for 2 more seconds. You look great. And so is it running that has set you up to stay so fit and so lean for your entire life and into your adult life now? So I can honestly say you look like a 20-year-old.
Well, thank you. That's the nicest thing I've heard. You're so sweet. I look at health in a very holistic way. I don't think that you can solve anything just by one particular item. So
it isn't just running. So it's the whole package. So give it to me, then summarize it, and then we're going to start looking at each one. Okay.
So when you're looking at the whole person and health, it's mind, body, spirit. It's we all listened to Dan Buettner when he came to talk in town about the 5 blue zones around the world and how people live to 100, but not just to 100, but they live well, right? So it's not just that they're getting older; they're actually living well.
My husband was in the front row with his lighter on and swaying and thrilled and guru and praying. He's so over the top inspired by that man. Well, loves it. He'll love your book. I'm going to have him read it. Again, this is Kathryn Guylay here with me, Cindy Dufour, on Talk of the Town at KDPI 89.1 FM. And Kathryn is generous enough to be here to talk with me today about her new book, Mountain Mantras. All right, Kathryn, so you were talking about the whole person, and it isn't just that you run. It isn't just, but go on about Blue Zones now.
Oh, well, what I thought was so interesting, what Dan was talking about when he was here, is that really what he saw in common, there wasn't a supplement, there wasn't a magic pill or elixir that people are taking that are living until they're 100 and beyond. It's about having a holistic way of being healthy. And part of that is purpose, having a purpose in life, feeling connection. So there's social connection. Yes, diet, absolutely. Yes, fitness. But it was interesting because he was, I think everybody in the audience was thinking, oh, is he going to talk about like extreme athleticism? And he was actually talking about, shepherds in Sardinia, in Italy, that are really doing more gentle but constant movement.
But it's purposeful too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That it's noble. They're shepherds, but it's a noble effort on their part. So he's showing purpose there as well. So you're talking about diet, a holistic approach, diet, exercise, having a real clear purpose.
And then I would say finally, it's just managing stress. I think stress is, you can look at the top 10 causes of death, and you can very easily link 8 of them to diet and to lifestyle sort of nutrition and activity, but you can link all 10 to stress. And so I think it's really about managing our stress. I just came from a yoga class. I'll give a shout out to Zenergy and all of the yoga instructors and mindfulness instructors that we have here in the Valley. That component is critical.
Absolutely. It really is. And I think we all have that, or so many of us in this valley have that in common, that we do strive to have a healthy lifestyle, and we're also grateful. I mean, we have that in common with everyone you walk around and come in contact with, and everyone that comes in here, our walk-in radio station at KDPI. We all are so grateful to be here in this beautiful valley and to have this kind of lifestyle, and we're seeking that, aren't we? But your book really does solidify it. It brings that holistic viewpoint, and where you aren't just focusing on one aspect. And it's adorable how you use skiing as the metaphor, but really specifically, I mean, you could almost be a better skier too from reading the book, even if you're not on the slopes, because you did take a mental approach to your skiing. And that's probably where I would guess this book was budding, there on the slopes. I mean, certainly you've had this holistic approach with your exercise, your diet, your nutritional counseling, and all of that is your background. So this is always foremost in your thought about your lifestyle. But then when you started skiing, and you were saying that you used a mental approach, an intellectual approach to the experience because it was scary. And was it there that everything kind of crystallized and you thought of your book on the slopes with skiing as the metaphor?
If you had seen me on the slopes, and this is not just the Alpine slopes, but also the Nordic slopes with Muffy Ritz and the whole Vamps team.
Right.
So I have a huge shout out to Divas and the Alpine skiing team here, the women's team, as well as Vamps for Nordic. But if you would laugh, because you might have seen me, sometimes when I would hear something that I thought had a really high stickiness factor, I would actually take out my phone and I would record it. Because I do talk in the book about how our minds are so full of information that sometimes we just need to, I talk about weeding the mind, and so having it be open and have space. And so I would say,
weeding,
that
like
was
clearing
out the mind, having a little space. And so on the mountain, I would hear something, again, it would be like, plant your poles, set your goals, or zoom out for the best view, or your body goes where you're looking, or throw yourself down the mountain. And
Which
I would
is courageous.
And I would just think about it, and I would record it, and I'd say there's something to that. And I would record it on my phone, and that's sort of how it all started to come together. Is I was hearing these things, I was recording them, and then it started to come together in this bigger picture.
It's so exciting. The creative process. I really want to get into that today as well, so that you can tell us all how you do that in the first place, and then have the mental discipline to get it all on paper. It's one thing if you're thinking about it. I love to think about writing. In fact, I love to talk about it. I love to dream about it. It's different, though, to sit down and actually start to grind out the pages on your computer and get it done. And I know I have that in me, and I used to write a lot, especially for college. When I was an English and theater major, we had my little IBM Selectric. I'm really aging myself right now. Yes, tiny person who looks 20, but what, you're in your 30s or early 40s maybe? I'm just throwing this out there. I know you never had to have an IBM Selectric at college. You had a full-on computer, and I know that. But we, back in the dark ages, did, and I'd plunk along on that typewriter, old-fashioned, and get a ton of work done. So I know I can do it if I have to. That's the thing, self-motivation. Well, if you don't have to do it, so why did you do it?
I have to say, so going back to your idea of, writing and the creative process, I think that every person on this planet has at least one book in them. They have a unique story. No one has had your life, Cindy, but you.
Right.
And so you have this unique way of looking at the world, and it's going to connect. I think that there is nothing new under the sun. That, you can look at my book, and there's Stephen Covey things in there, and he even talks about, Stephen Covey is the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yes. Love his book. He talks about how those habits he called them universal principles. It's like he didn't make them up. They're universal principles, but he put them in a framework that was new, that was fresh. And I think that's what the creative process really is about, it's about taking things, again, nothing is really new under the sun. It's about putting it into a package and putting a new spin on it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll appeal to a person that wouldn't have read a leadership book or maybe wasn't interested in a wellness book. But because there's this new spin on it, this new story, they'll think, oh, I'm interested in that. So that's what I think. I think everyone has a book in them.
I like that. So, Kathryn, your book, Mountain Mantras, is a wellness book. It is a self-help book, would you say? And it's motivational. So you could take this out on the circuit. You could be a motivational speaker with this.
I've already started.
Are you making public appearances?
Yes.
I know this counts right here.
Yes, it does.
But as far as really standing up and having the microphone and telling your story audibly that is in this book, you're doing that already.
So the publication date was the 15th of September, and on the 16th of December, I was a speaker at the annual conference for the Nonprofit Center of Idaho. So that is the center. Thank you. It was really fun. And, they asked me to come and talk about these principles as related to nonprofit management. So in my audience, and it's all really about who is your audience, I was thinking about these are people that are running organizations that are solving huge social problems like homelessness, like hunger, like, animal abuse, all kinds of stuff. How can I help them to be in their jobs and be successful? And it was great. It was like standing room only. There were people like poking their heads in the door saying, what's going on in here? Because I think, one of the things that comes out in this book is that we take ourselves so seriously in life, and those are serious jobs. There is no question about it, that those running a nonprofit organization, which I do as well, is a very serious job. But how do we continue to serve our population? We have to stay in our jobs, and so we need to take care of ourselves. So it's okay to have a little fun here and there.
That's good.
So that was a debut, and then I was at the Society for Human Resources Management conference in Twin, and so that's sort of a more business-like focus. I'll be at the College of Southern Idaho this coming month in October. I've got an event on the 19th of October at 6 p.m., and I'll be talking more about sort of parenting and general wellness for the family. So it's another angle.
And do you love public speaking? I'm sure you're amazing at it, standing up in front of rooms full.
I love it. I wasn't sure, because I've been doing a lot of teaching over the years with Nurture, and that's been a much more intimate experience, and I really love that because you have that sort of one-on-one. But that's all a big audience really is. It's just it's a bunch of one-on-ones.
Gosh, what a great attitude. And I have to say, for the search engines looking for Kathryn's book, Mountain Mantras, you're way up there for wellness literature, aren't you?
Well, it was amazing. So I hit
That's
number
huge.
1 on Amazon new releases, which was really surprising. And I have to say, I wonder if it's my mother-in-law. I know she's been buying the book and giving it to her friends, and then she's been sending me feedback from her friends. But I think, again, it's about striking a chord that no one's ever heard before. It's this idea of leadership, of wellness, but wrapped in this metaphor of mountains. And, you know, there is another book out there that's similar. It's called Code of the West, Cowboy Ethics.
Yes.
And our local, photographer who recently passed on.
Stockline. I have that book. I love it.
Beautiful, beautiful book. That was another piece of inspiration for me as I was writing this book, that's the same thing. It took a really neat metaphor, which is life of a cowboy.
Yes.
And it applied to something, in business and leadership, but it just made it so memorable. And I think that book can connect with people that might not read, a Stephen Covey book, or might not read, Jim Collins' Good to Great, or from a wellness perspective, might not read, a Walter Willett book, which is going to be much more prescriptive. And it is, he's top of his field at Harvard, so really amazing knowledge. But so this is a little bit more silly. It's a more storytelling oriented.
Hilarious. So fun. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about your book. So we've talked a little bit already about where the idea kind of started to crystallize up on the mountain, of course. So let's go back then. At the beginning of the book, you talk about your life in Chicago and why you moved to the Wood River Valley. Can you give everyone an idea of that who haven't had a chance to read the book yet? Because
Absolutely.
It's lovely and it's all part of the big story here, and that is the mountains and the joy and the deep connection that you have from the mountains and with the mountains, and it's great. And it brings you what you're talking about, that holistic approach to low stress. You let go of, it's a decompression. So this lifestyle that we're all living here, that we're so fortunate to have, is already a built-in, it's decompression, a healthy living kind of thing. So we're so lucky.
We are so lucky here, without a doubt. I think that, people have asked me, did we have an aha moment? Were we thinking about moving for a while? Was it Jeff's idea? Was it mine? And that definitely is a theme here in the Valley. How do we, survive here? How do we do our jobs here? Because it is remote, and so you have to be creative. But in our case, it really was somewhat of an aha moment, but there's always a build up to that. So the story is that Jeff and I had small children, so they were in second and fourth grade at the time, and we were kind of feeling that we were in competitive jobs ourselves.
In Chicago.
I was in management consulting, and he was in investment banking, and we were kind of in the fast lane is the way we felt about it. But then we had kids, and it was like, whoa, we thought we were in the fast lane before. And on the North Shore of Chicago, it's very competitive just to get your kid in the right classes in the right schools.
I love your stories in here in your book, Mountain Mantras, about that. Just a quick snapshot shot in here about what it's like to have young children and get them in the right schools and the right activities and the right nannies and the right everything. I mean, you have such cute things to say. I can see why you wanted to leave all that. It sounds intimidating and crazy, especially the thing that you talked about where Elena, your little girl, was speaking Spanish and but I don't want to ruin it for the listeners. You tell it.
Oh, well, so we were feeling like, we were both working so hard, and we were trying to kind of live the dream. Like, what is the dream? And I think that we woke up to the fact that it was a lie for us. And the way that we woke up to that fact is we were in a theater. Actually, it was in a church where we were watching The Race to Nowhere. And so that is a film about how children are under so much stress today at very young ages to have so much homework done and have so much on their resumes in fourth grade, kind of thing, and to get to the right colleges, to get to the right career. I mean, it's all what Madeline Levine talks about, in sort of this high intensive, high activity, now digital world, which wasn't even playing into the game at that point. So we went to this film and we were watching these stories of these kids with ulcers that were young, and they were talking about their homework. And we were really, brought into this story. And then at the end of the movie, they talked about how it was dedicated to this 14-year-old girl who took her life because of stress. And they had the mom, and Jeff and I, we had tears in our eyes, and the lights came on, and we looked at each other, and I didn't know what he was going to say. And he looked at me and he said, "Let's move to Sun Valley."
So that was an aha for sure. And you had been coming here some, right?
We had
annually.
Yeah. I just got chills telling that story because it was
a lovely story.
It was so profound. And, what it was is we had been coming as a family, and all of that like crazy activity, looking at the calendar, looking at every minute of the day being scheduled, all of that went away when we were here. So we would come for 2 weeks out of the year.
To decompress.
And we would stay in a condo that my in-laws have, and we would ski as a family. We would have fun. We would watch, silly movies together and eat as a family. And we would be so tired that we wouldn't want to do anything but be with each other. And so that was the feeling that we wanted.
For your life. You didn't want to just have that a few weeks out of the year. And you were lucky to even have that, because a lot of families don't even get to go off together and decompress or have something like this Valley to offer. But how lovely. So Jeff said it. He said, let's move to Sun Valley. And you went, okay, right then and there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then a year later, you were here.
Yeah, then I think, again, it goes back to this idea of setting an intention, planting your poles.
Yes.
As soon as we put that intention out there, it started to happen. But we needed to say it. We needed to write it down. Like, we wrote down, we are going to move to Sun Valley. And then we started to, put the things in place, and then it happened within a year. So, again, there is a lot of power in our intentions. And I really do believe, not to be too woo-woo, but I believe that we can manifest our lives.
Oh, I do too. I love it. Having read The Secret and some of those lovely books that I do not think are woo-woo I love them. I think they're actually very practical. Recovering management consultant is how you describe yourself in the book early on. So tell what you mean by that, obviously. Recovering from, clearly, that lifestyle and that craziness. Can you tell the guacamole story that Jeff has?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Well, the recovering thing, I think, goes back to the idea of always having to look at your watch and saying, I need to be here at this minute, and just constantly. And let me tell you, here in Ketchum, we talk about, Ketchum time. You can be 5 minutes late, it's okay. You can go to a yoga class, you don't get shut out like you do in Chicago if you're 5 minutes late. But so that was what I was recovering from.
So shedding that so that you can relax, because if you still have that inner clock going and that inner stress, it doesn't matter what environment you're in. If that's built in and it becomes a part of you, you have to be able to shed that. No matter where you are, right?
No matter where you are. And that was a book, and I'll get to the guacamole story because it's pretty funny. But it's really important. One of the things that I did as we were thinking about this move here is I read Jon Kabat-Zinn's book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. Because I wanted to make sure that we weren't thinking that by moving, we were going to solve anything. It's an inner to outer type thing. And so you can go anywhere. And I actually think you can find mountain mantras on Lake Michigan. I think you can find these. You don't have to be in the mountains. I think you can find this anywhere. I think that's a really important point to make.
But did you take it back with you to Chicago? How long did it take for it to wear off? Your weeks that you would have annually in Sun Valley to go back to Chicago in your busy lives. How long did it take till you were back wrapped up in it all?
Well, you know how it is on vacation. It takes you, I don't know how long it takes you to unwind, but like when you get there, like you're still on your regular life.
It takes a while.
And then, it's probably the same, transition. So anywhere between a day and a two, and you're back in it. And I think that the recovering management consultant thing was just that idea that when you're a management consultant, like a lawyer or like an architect or like many different careers, when you're billing your time by the hour, everything starts to become very compartmentalized. But real quick, so guacamole.
Yes, because again, this is a snapshot of Jeff's life.
Yeah. So Wall Street is sort of the pinnacle of stress and, paying your dues, and that's just part of the deal. And so he has a lot of funny stories. In fact,
so he was on Wall Street and grounded out there and then moved to Chicago later. Okay.
Yes, he did. And there are actually, he's hysterical. He has this great group of Wall Street friends that, kind of, because when you go through something very difficult, you stay close. And so those...
You've been traumatized together. You're connected by that.
So he saved some emails from his days on Wall Street that are in the book, because I was like, they're just hysterical. They're written at 4 a.m. when nobody has slept, and it's just very, very silly. And that's all about getting some good boots on or your solid foundation. But he was telling me when I was in Chicago and he was in New York, he'd say, this is what's happening on, and he did work on the floor. The guacamole story is on the trading floor. And so, you're so revved up and the market closes and you're like, rah. And they got vats of guacamole on the trading floor. So this was the 90s, mid 90s, right? So everything was kind of booming, and the traders they ran across the trading floor and like dunk their heads in guacamole. Like that's just sort of like you have to start to get creative to, I mean, if you can't run 5 miles, you dunk your head in guacamole.
And did it work? For seconds. Oh, that is just hysterical. It's a true story then. It wasn't just made up.
No, absolutely not. No, none of this is made up. And the stuff about my kids too, they're just like, oh, I can't believe you told the story about the frosting on the cake and the hidden fish pills.
It's so cute. Yes. With your son's name
Alexander.
Is Alexander. Yeah. Well, you call him Alex though, don't we?
Everybody at school, everyone calls him Alex, but we have a special name for him, and that's Alexander.
You did such a good job again in the story. Elena's their daughter. Kathryn tells it was a time when Alex ate the whole cake, basically, the chocolate bundt cake, and had the remnants on his mouth, and there was only a little cake left. And when asked, Alex said very matter-of-factly that ants ate it. And you did such a good mommy job there. Can you tell how you handled that?
Well, and it's very important to the foundation of my philosophy around nutrition, because when I was growing up, I lived with my dad, and he's a biochemist, and that's the whole story about how I got into nutrition. But my stepmom really didn't like it when my sister and I would eat all the food in the house, and she wasn't used to teenagers. And like, you eat a lot when you're a teenager, right? So it was always sort of who ate all the ice cream, and who ate all this, and so there was definitely some shame
and guilt
and guilt when I was growing up. We had these jars of chocolate chips on the counter, and there was signs on them that said "Do not eat." And let me tell you, Cindy, if I have a serious vice or a problem, it's with chocolate chips.
Still chocolate chips.
Yeah, and it's because
the taboo.
Absolutely. So that you didn't want Alex to suddenly have a taboo, did you?
That's
exactly right.
Good.
Right. Yeah, I could have said, no, they didn't eat the cake. You ate the cake, but instead I was like, wow, let's go check it out. Oh my gosh, so.
Now, did that happen in Chicago or Sun Valley?
That happened in Chicago.
So you were already very enlightened living in Chicago, clearly, and very disciplined and very successful and professional, and those are all pluses. But again, you moved to the Wood River Valley to have much more of a relaxed, less stress kind of life. And one last little story from the book that led you to move here was Elena and her Spanish speaking. Can you tell that? And then we'll get right on to the rest of the book.
Well, so when you have a nanny I actually think it's a huge advantage to be able to speak Spanish,
of course,
with a nanny. And so we definitely looked for somebody that spoke Spanish. But then we started to notice that all of her words were her first words. Her first word was agua. And then she started to, ask for things in Spanish. And, my mom doesn't speak Spanish, and my in-laws don't speak Spanish. My dad speaks a little bit. But it was just kind of like, wow. Who is spending time with our kids, right? And what is really important in the end. And I think that's kind of like the zoom out thing.
Yes.
That's probably what I struggle with the most is we get so caught up in, even here, right? There's so much to do. We get so caught up in what we have to get done and what's going on. But like when I say zoom out, I mean like really zooming out.
Get a bird's eye view.
Like, what am I on this planet to do? How can I leave this planet a better?
That.
Yeah. What's going to be said at my funeral? What is my family going to say about me? What is my community going to say? I mean, that's really zooming out.
I'm going to say that you look like a 20-year-old now at all times. You're amazing. You're going to be one of those Blue Zone people, though. You're going to outlive everybody with your lifestyle, living in Sun Valley for the low stress, the way that you eat, being a nutritional counselor, and your unbelievable ability to get things done. I'm so impressed with you being able to write this book, and I want to get into that now, but just that holistic diet, exercise, having a sense of purpose. It's so clear in your life. If you're lucky enough to know Kathryn Guylay, you see that expressed in her everyday living. But if you don't know her, you can read her book, Mountain Mantras. We're going to come right back and hear all about it. We're going to get into the mantras. We're going to take each one and talk a few minutes about each one, because it's a great lesson learned just to hear about it, because because this book is about wellness. It's a self-help. It's motivational. It'll change your life. And it's so much fun to read. So I highly recommend it. And you can get it on Amazon. Mountain Mantras, Kathryn Guylay. This is Cindy Dufour. You're at KDPI 89.1 FM Ketchum. We'll be right back with some great information from the book. Stay right here. I have a shining star here with me today. This is Cindy Dufour at KDPI 89.1 FM, Talk of the Town. And Kathryn Guylay is here, shining star. She just has put out Mountain Mantras, Wellness and Life Lessons from the Slopes. And when did it launch?
So the publication date was on Tuesday, September 15th. And
it's a big deal.
It's available at Iconoclast. It's available at Chapter 1. Zenergy's going to have copies, and you can also get it online.
All right, and it's top of the list on the Amazon wellness literature. So check it out, order it, read it. It's life-changing. It's about wellness. It's really a self-help book. It's motivational. So let's give our listeners and me just a quick lesson in each of the 6 mantras that you write about. And again, your motivation for this book is not only your background as management consultant, a nutritional counselor, learning to approach life with a holistic view of proper diet, exercise, purpose, and low stress. And that's in part, if not totally, why you and Jeff moved your beautiful family, Elena and Alex, who are now in Elena's 9th grade and Alex's 7th grade, here to the Wood River Valley. But you took all that you've learned over the years and your professionalism and your love and your new love for skiing and overcoming the obstacles to learn the sport. And it all came together in this book, Mountain Mantras. So there are 6 mantras, and give just a quick little synopsis about skiing and how that all relates. And I'm sure it's throughout all 6 mantras. That beautiful theme of skiing and using it as a metaphor for life lessons. And let's just let our listeners have 6 powerful lessons to think of from this interview.
Wonderful. So I'll start, obviously, with mantra number 1, and that's really about keeping a positive attitude. Now, to go through the metaphor, what I did is I tried to use language that is specific to skiing. But as we've been talking about, you don't necessarily have to be a skier to learn from the mantras and to hopefully change your life with this book. So it's called Change Your Lens on Life. And so that's kind of that, rose-colored glasses, how you look at the world is how it treats you back. And so tell me, Cindy, if this happens to you. But when you go out and you're skiing with somebody, whether it's on the Nordic trails or on the Alpine, and you have your partner says, I'm going to fall today, and this is so hard, and it's so cold, and you get the sense that they're just not really excited to be there. Okay, guess what ends up happening? They end up being cold, they end up falling, and they end up not having fun.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. I make people kiss the snow when they act like that, by the way. We have to stop, and we have to give it a kiss, because we have to be grateful. But that's a different perspective, isn't it, that you're teaching in that first mantra? Change your perspective, change your attitude, but go on. This is lovely.
Oh, it's really how you look at the world is how it treats you back. And then I started to see the people that would show up, and no matter how well they skied, they were excited to be there. They were excited about not just the fact that they were going to get a little exercise and be outside, but it was that connection, like, oh gosh, when you go to river run in the morning and you see the 70 and 80 and 90-year-olds gathering around the fireplace, having their coffee, that's the blue zone right there, right? That's the connection. Yes. They're just so excited about their days, and they usually have a wonderful time. So that's what the first mantra is about. It's about positivity. And I did learn that very early in life. I had a fantastic mentor in my management consulting career, and he would absolutely put a stop to anybody's complaining, especially around a client. Because he would say, the client is paying us to come in, and they don't want to hear about your bad taxi driver or that your flight was this, that, or other, or bumpy. They want you to come in and get started on a good note and provide leadership and make them feel like you're going to take them to where they need to be, because that's what management consultants do. So he had 0 tolerance.
Now, do you write about him? Is that Frank?
Yeah, it's actually not his real name, but he was a fantastic mentor.
Boy, how enlightened, and how lovely for you to have him. But again, we learn in here as well, there are really no accidents, are there? I mean, that's one of what you would call a divine coincidence. How do you say it?
I say the universe provides.
Yeah. I love it. So Frank. Okay, so we have the first mantra, and it's about positivity.
Absolutely. So that's change your lens on life. Then I get into get some good boots on. And it's interesting because I did end up having a lot in the book originally, and it's many drafts. But in the earlier drafts, I had a lot about technique because skiing, as you know, starts in your feet.
Now, is this mantra 2?
This is mantra 2. So get some good boots on. Yeah. Okay. Skiing starts in your feet. But you know what? Everything in your life starts from your foundation. And I believe that your foundation is not only your education, but it's also your experience. And the big thing there is that we should never, and this is a Jen Weigel thing too, we should never think that we are too good for any experience, that it's too menial for us. And so I talk about the Karate Kid, and how he shows up and he's told to put the wax on and wax off.
Yes.
And that ends up being his training to become a karate champion. And I tell a little story about how I worked in the State of Illinois Center, and I was called to work in the governor's office one day. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be my breakthrough moment. And I was all excited. And my other intern that was, we were both called in and we were both excited and had huge expectations. And we were given a dish rag and told to dust the china. But we made the most of it, and we were having a great time, and we ended up meeting the chief of staff. So you never know what's going to happen in that moment.
And that kind of work builds a strong foundation, like you're talking about. Get some good boots with that cute, metaphor from the mountain, and start at the ground up. And, you remind me of the movie Bruce Almighty. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And with Jim Carrey. And when he first meets God in that white, crystal clean room, God makes Bruce mop and scrub the floors, and for quite some time. And it brings him back down to earth. It gets him grounded. It gets him focused. And there's a lot to that. And you were saying Jennifer Weigel, you were referencing her. She's one of your great friends, and she has written plenty of books, one of which I adore, I'm Spiritual, Damn It. And she's a public speaker, motivational speaker, and you now are following in her footsteps. You're friends from college, is that correct?
We are friends from high school, and I do love what she says. One of the things she says in I'm Spiritual, Damn It is wherever you are is where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we need to embrace that. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. And she talks in her book about, doing book talks with 2 people. But you know what? You can change 2 people's lives, and that can go on and have ripple effects. We just don't know because we can't see, we don't have that perspective.
Right. Okay, so a good, strong foundation.
That's mantra number 2.
Okay.
And then mantra number 3, that actually, what I was saying about having a perspective, that's all about mantra number 3. It's about zooming out. And I love how skiing is this accelerated classroom where you get to practice things over and over. If you're really thinking about it, if you're aware, when you're going to the top of the mountain, that gives you, and we go over and over in a day, hopefully. Right. And we really get the idea of, oh my gosh, look at this expansive world. I sometimes I feel really small, right, when I'm in this big infinity view. But I think it's important in life, and we were talking about being able to zoom out and see the whole picture. Why are we here? Why are we in Classroom Earth? What is our purpose in life? How are we supposed to leave this planet better than how we came in, right? What is our funeral going to look like? Begin with the end in mind.
Right.
That's really that's a Stephen Covey thing. So I think that changed my life. If it changes other people's lives to every time they go to the mountain or even going to Lake Michigan and zooming out and seeing the bigger picture, it's really important, especially now in this digital world when we're so distracted and doing the texts and the emails and all that. I think zooming out is so critical.
Let me ask you a question, and we'll pause here with the 6 mantras. We're on mantra number 3. Give me a quick look at a day in the life of Kathryn Guylay, knowing that you have this well-trained ability to elevate your thinking. You're very enlightened. You're incredibly disciplined and totally down to earth and professional and a great mom and wife and all of those things. But you also have a spirituality about you that has a loftiness to it, and you do glow. You sort of beam. And again, back to your holistic approach of diet, exercise, purpose. Give me now, knowing the whole kind of picture here, a day in the life. Let's say it's a day that the kids are off to school, so that you don't have a nanny, taking care of them like you used to back in the day when you were full-time working in Chicago, and you left all that so you could have what you have here, which is a much more stress-free, family-oriented, full approach to happiness and health. So let's get the kids to school, and I know you have a radio show here. I know we're both so lucky to have these shows that we do at KDPI. We're thrilled. I know you are too. But how much exercise are you doing? What are you eating? Can you start us with breakfast, or even what time you get up? From the time you get up to what time you go to bed? Give me just a snapshot of that.
Okay, well, I have to tell listeners right now that because you have such a wonderful way about you, and the way you've described me, people are probably thinking, wow, who is this person? I want to just say right now, I am not perfect. I don't think the word perfect should exist. I think it messes up everything.
But you're aware and mindful.
Well,
and paying close attention to healthy things.
But here's the thing.
And
not always. But so not always. And every day, to answer your question, every day is different. And some days I have good days and some days I have bad.
Of course.
And,
well, give me a good day.
Okay.
Let's just gush and have fun with it.
Okay.
And then we can take a bad day, and you can tell me how you use what you've learned and what you now have in this book so others can learn from it. And clearly you've read a ton so that you have great ideas from other great authors. But we'll take a good day snapshot and a bad day and how you fix that one.
Okay, so when I get the kids to school, this is True Confessions live on air, I have a little bowl of chocolate chips. I start my day with dark chocolate every single day. Now, if I'm doing something like a cleanse or something, because I love the cleanses they have in town, I won't. But oh my gosh,
this is shocking. I'm shocked, and I love it.
See, so I'm not perfect. Not perfect.
I love it. Every morning?
Every morning.
But what is that bowl of chocolate? How big is it? I need to know.
It's not small, and it depends on the day. Like today, so Jeff was traveling Monday through Thursday, and we were both really tired, and we're like, okay, it's Friday, so now I've gotten him onto chocolate chips. He's really funny.
That's really the first thing you pop in your mouth for food nutrition every morning.
Isn't this terrible?
I love it. I thought you might say toothpaste, and then I don't eat again until lunch because you're so tiny.
It's
whatever.
Okay. And again, it goes back to that story we were telling about the do not eat. Like, I was told not to eat chocolate chips, and so I have a vice.
Yes,
I wake up every morning and say, I have a right to eat these. And I'm going to enjoy them, and they have caffeine, and they have some good things in them, some micronutrients, and,
So dark chocolate, the good stuff.
Yeah,
How dark? What's the cacao level? The percentage.
To be honest, Jeff and I, we mix it up. Sometimes we do, and I'm always honest, by the way. I hate that expression, to be honest, because I have to always be honest and admit to what I'm doing. But we mix it up. We have, the blue bags that they have in Atkinson's. They're like little rectangle. You can tell I love them so much. So we have those. We have Ghirardelli. We have Dove. And I love those Dove promises. I handed those out at my talk last week because they have like little messages inside of them, and my kids love them too, because then you get like a little boost. And I was saying to the audience members as we were handing them out, I said, this is a reminder to look for those signs, because sometimes you can find a little sign in a chocolate wrapper.
But what about oatmeal and kale smoothies and strawberry and banana this and... So what happens after chocolate?
Okay, so after chocolate, I do give myself a little break. I don't go right into breakfast, but you do want to eat something healthy within the first hour. Now, sometimes I go to yoga in the morning because I like hot yoga. I'm addicted, and sometimes there's a class at 7:30, and so I don't eat before that. But all the research says that you should eat something healthy within the first hour that you're awake. And so in the book, I talk about how I love my rice cooker and my slow cooker for making breakfast. So if you just want to make your breakfast at night, you can just assemble. Like, I'm doing a class next week at CSI. I'm doing 2 cooking classes, and I'm going to make an apple pie porridge in the slow cooker. So I'm going to take steel-cut oats and apples and cinnamon, and you just put enough liquid in there. You do usually 2 times amount of liquid to the oats, and then I add a little bit more if I'm going to leave it for overnight so it doesn't burn. And in the morning, if you can tolerate dairy, you can mix in some milk. You can put in you want to have some protein. So like if I think about walnuts, with apples, yum, that sounds like a great combo. But the house if you have that apple and cinnamon smell, people kind of come into the kitchen and they go, it smells like apple pie.
You always have something great cooking in your kitchen. If you're just tuning in, this is Kathryn Guylay here with me today. It's Cindy Dufour at Talk of the Town at KDPI 89.1 FM, and we're having so much fun talking about her new book, Mountain Mantras, and I can tell by looking at the time that we might run out before we get through all 6 mantras, because it's so much fun to talk about Kathryn, talk about a whole person, enlightened, lovely, inside and out, so much to talk about. But she's also a nutritionist, and so right now we're discussing a day in the life of, and so when she's talking about her way of eating, her diet, and these recipes are in your book, and they're so great. Really listen, because this is great advice. So breakfast, it sounds amazing. Now, do you embark on some exercise, or do you get things done around the house? Do you do busy work? I know you're an author, you're working. So do you do some work before you exercise?
Every day really is different.
Okay.
It depends on if I'm going to yoga, and I really do follow the schedule. If I'm going to yoga, like today, let's see. Today I went for a run. I took our little puppy that we got from the animal shelter.
He's beautiful. Now tell me about the run.
So, it wasn't a major one.
Is it trail running or on the road?
It's half and half. So I did a half trail, half bike path.
And how many miles for how long?
It was about 4 miles. So
okay.
And then
I'm so far the chocolate piece I can relate to. It's not intimidating for me to eat chocolate first thing in the morning. You lost me at slow cooker and running. But I'm going to try. Okay, keep going. So 4 miles on the trails, on the road. It's so balanced and lovely. Okay, then you come home, jump in the shower, move on with what?
And then I had a meeting at Zenergy, and so Zenergy is going to carry the book. So we talked about that, and we talked about some talks that we're going to do over the holidays.
So motivational speaking.
Yeah, so then there's a lot of scheduling around that right now.
Okay, so you worked.
Oh, yeah. It's always in there.
Wow. All right. And then did you have lunch before you came here for the radio show?
Okay, so here we go. True confessions, man.
Right.
So then I went to yoga, because my meeting went right up to yoga. Then I had my hot yoga class with Sandy Hagel, who I love, and all the wonderful people in there. And then I got out of class, and I saw Annalise Ware, who is a wonderful acupuncturist at Zenergy, and then we started to talk. And I looked at the clock, and I try not to be too connected to the clock, but I needed to be here. So I had a
okay, so you had to grab lunch on the fly.
I grabbed a coconut bar again.
Are you
with
talking
chocolate.
about the Cliff?
No,
Oh.
it's a coconut. It's like a coconut bar. They have them actually at the Board Bin. And
Yes.
it's just like coconut. It's high fat, but it's the good kind of fat. It's coconut oil.
So an energy bar.
It's basically like an energy bar. So I was eating on the go. So see, not perfect.
But that's not that bad. I would say I had to have food on the go today, too, for lunch. I had a little power bar coming in here, a little boost. But that's okay, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's all okay. That's what we need to know. It's all okay. We cannot beat ourselves up, because that leads back to the whole holistic, out of balance, having stress. We create stress for ourselves. If we are judging ourselves too much, then it's all the whole system will break down.
So very forgiving of ourselves. If we're on target, it's a good thing, though. We want a life of purpose and health and, Okay, so then you're going to pick up kids. You're going to see kids this afternoon and be a mommy, and then cooking for dinner. What do you have planned? And I know you get that slow cooker out. You do, the Fiesta casserole. I've had that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to be making that next week for one of my classes. But, I have to say Friday night is our date night. So Jeff and I go out to dinner.
Oh, and he's back from his
travels. Trip. He got back.
Have...
Yeah, so we have our date night. So we go out once a week. And I talk about that in the book.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, to be able to just have time to, to be with your spouse or partner or your friends, that connection, and the kids have their plans. So it's all good. But I have to say, on the whole idea of not being too hard on ourselves, one of the mantras is embrace the yard sale. And, in skiing, that's when you fall and you lose all your equipment and, your skis pop off and you lose your poles.
What mantra is that? Are we there? Is that mantra 4?
So we were at Zoom Out for the best view at 3, and then there's plant your poles, which I think we've talked about, which is number 4.
Tell us that.
So,
but real quick. So mantra 4 is plant your poles.
Plant your poles.
Which means to
set your goals, to set your intentions. And that is actually a lesson that I did have with Divas, where our instructor would say, every time we put our pole in the snow, Say the word intention and put it out there. Don't put it like right by your body. Put your pole in that place that you want to go. And so it was like, oh, that's exactly what you do with setting goals, whether it's on a daily basis or a 6-month basis or a year basis. And I'm a big fan of Jack Canfield, and he talks all about the importance of setting goals, about writing them down, giving them power through the written word and talking about them. You're so much more likely to achieve your goals if you actually set concrete goals. So like with this book, I said by the time it was a week old, I wanted to have 25 reviews on Amazon, and it was hysterical. I got exactly 25.
Oh my goodness.
So it's just, it really is about being concrete. If I had said, I want some reviews on Amazon, who knows? I might have gotten 10 or 12 or whatever, but I said I want 25 in the first week, and I got exactly 25. Now,
unbelievable?
I think that's pretty...
And I believe that though so much. So you set specific goals, and used an example too early on in our interview here, and it's in your book about how you ended up in the Wood River Valley with your darling family, and you and Jeff wrote down the goal. You didn't just talk about it, dream about it. You wrote it down. Where did you look at that? Where do you put that, for instance?
Well, a lot of people do vision boards.
Yeah. Did you? Do you mind me asking?
No, not at all. I'm a sticky note person.
You are? Okay.
So for my book goals, I just wrote 3 things down. I like the number 3. And a lot of good things come in 3s. And I just stuck it on my mirror.
Oh, I do that. I put sticky notes on my mirror. I love it.
Perfect. Easy. I think vision boards, sometimes people go, it takes time and effort. Just whatever's easy.
Oh, that's so inspiring. Again, you can get all these details in Kathryn's book, Mountain Mantras. We're talking about the 6 mantras, and we're on now number 5.
So that's embrace the yard sale, and that was really what we were saying about not being perfect and embracing imperfection. And when you fail, you learn, and being able to look at that as a learning opportunity. And that's kind of what I would see with my kids. They would wipe out on the mountain. They would just get right up. And the next time they did that turn or that jump, they would do it better because they were learning. And so I studied a lot of failures as I was writing the book, and it was so interesting to see how major failures turn into incredible successes. My favorite one being Dan Harris's panic attack on Good Morning America. And in front of 5 million viewers, he just sort of mentally melted down.
Now, who's Dan Harris? He wasn't the anchor or the show host, was he?
He was, yeah.
Really?
He melted down, and you can watch it on, if you just Google it or go to YouTube and just say Dan Harris panic attack. So he was a correspondent. He was in war zones. He was in a very competitive career, very young age. I mean, kind of had the recipe for stress. And so he was on air, and just all of a sudden he started to not make sense. And again, he said, I embraced that, and I wanted to find out why I did that.
After the fact. He did some research. How long ago was this?
So his book on the whole episode just came out within the last year. It's called 10% Happier. So it was a couple years ago that I think that his meltdown was. And he was horrified, right, in the beginning or during. And then he really embraced it and said, what can I learn? And he interviewed, Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle and all these people. And he learned the importance of this stress response and, going into the reptilian brain. And then he started to meditate. And that's what his book is about. It's about how it makes him balanced in what he calls 10% happier. Like, he doesn't want to promise the world. He just wants to say, I'm 10% happier because I meditate.
But he can track it to that panic attack on national television.
Absolutely.
So your point then, with that example in Mantra 5, embrace the mistakes, embrace the failures, is that you can become stronger, obviously, if you don't fixate, and have that become a problem.
If you look forward and say, what can I learn? What is the universe teaching me?
And Mantra 6?
So Mantra 6 probably is the most fun because it's called Throw Yourself Down the Mountain. And people think, wow, that's really counterintuitive. But the idea is that you need to commit to whatever you're doing 100%. So if you have your positive attitude, if you have your foundation, if you have your vision and your goals, and you've learned how to learn from your failures, the next thing you really need to do is you need to just commit. You just need to, and you practice that on the mountain every time you turn, because you literally have to throw your weight. You have to commit. You have to say, I'm not going to sit back on my skis.
I love it.
I'm going to commit. And that's what I heard from so many entrepreneurs, from so many business people, that if it's that same sort of hesitation of sitting back that will end up killing you. And in skiing, you accelerate and crash when you sit back in your butt, right? You put your weight in your butt.
Of course.
But it's extremely applicable to business and to life.
My goodness, it's so inspiring. Did you, and I want to talk, we're out of time, but who cares? We're going to keep going for a few more minutes. You're at KDPI 89.1 FM. This is Cindy Dufer with Talk of the Town, and I'm so thrilled to have Kathryn Guylay here, author of her new book, Mountain Mantras. And we just went through the 6 mantras. And did you write this book before you wrote it? In other words, did you have this pretty much written in your thought before you sat down to type? Can you give us a sense of how you actually got it on paper? Because again, I love to talk about writing and the books I would write or the screenplays, but actually doing it is another story. Now, if I look at your 6 mantras, this is a book of wellness, self-help, motivation. I can use each one of these toward that goal and writing the goal down. You can take whatever subject matter that is important to you or in the forefront of your mind today and use Kathryn's step-by-step 6 mantras to use them any way that is fitting for you. For me right now, I'm thinking about writing. So I'm lucky enough to be able to ask the question of you today, Kathryn, how did you then have the discipline to do this? Did you already have it in your mind? I almost think in 2020, it looks almost easy when somebody's already done it, but it isn't. So you must have had some idea of what you wanted to write before you sat down. Can you just tell us, and how long did it take to write it? Did you say a year?
So it was pretty much written between the close of the mountain and it will be the opening of the mountain. It's sort of like it's amazing. It was very
so fast.
But the book that we have in front of us right now is a very different book. I started it again. I was thinking about this as I was doing the skiing with the Vamps and the Divas. So there's this creative process where you're actually not writing. And then when I actually started to sit down and put this together, I followed a mantra. I just realized this.
Yes.
I started with the end. I said, what do I want to teach people? What are the action items? And so I called it, because I didn't know what the book was going to be called. I didn't know, the title, subtitle, didn't know anything.
This was at the end of what ski season? This last one?
This last one.
You wrote this that quickly
Yes.
and have it published and already at the top of the Amazon. What?
It is a little crazy, but I sat down in the beginning and I called
major
it
success.
I called it Kathryn's credo. Like, what do I want to pass on to the world? And so each chapter has action items at the end, and I wrote those first. So I wrote the action items first. What do I want to teach people? And then I went back and I thought through, and it was sort of like, what are the stories in my life, and how do they, I sort of charted it out. And then what's really interesting is then I got beta readers, which I really recommend, because I'm part of the Ketchum Innovation Center here in town, and we really advocate using the Lean Startup model to launch any business, and a book is basically a business. And so you start with the customer. What does the customer want, and where's the customer feeling a need, and so how can you meet that need? So I got a group of about 20 to 30 people together, and I started running my ideas by them. I ran titles and pictures and covers and everything, but then I actually gave them the manuscript, and I got feedback. I gave them about a month, 6 weeks to read it. And it was really interesting. I had both men and women, and they were from all parts of the country. And the men came back and they said, and it was really funny, I really wanted the yoga and mindfulness to be in the book, all integrated. And they said, Kathryn, you need to take that out. It's really distracting. So that's why we have the 6 mantras. And then at the end, there's this appendix that goes through the mantras again, and it talks about the connection to yoga and mindfulness. And I have to say to listeners that if you buy the book on Monday, there's a free gift where you can get 6 podcasts and like a whole multimedia kit that talks about how to integrate yoga and mindfulness and the mantras into your life. So that's kind of interesting. But that's, in answering your question about the creative process, it is very iterative. It is not linear. It sometimes feels like you're channeling. If you think about the messages that you need to send, you just kind of sit down and you use the morning. The morning is your most creative time. So
would you block certain hours a day?
In the morning, yeah.
Now, when? Was it during chocolate chip hour or was it during, I'm teasing you.
It is.
Was it during running hour?
No, it was early in the morning.
Did you have chocolate chips next to you?
I absolutely did.
That's, again, I can picture myself if I think there's chocolate involved. So go on. So you're up at what time?
So it would depend, but I think those sort of like 5 to 6 in the morning times, those are like the best.
Really creative.
Because you've just woken up, you're close to your dream state. It's
Do
when
you always
you can
get up that early?
Not always.
And then you go to bed kind of early, don't you? Aren't
do.
you in bed by like 9 p.m., 9?
It depends on the day, but yeah, I say I grow like a pumpkin stem at the end of the day. The kids are like, ah.
Right, you got to go 9. Okay, but it's because you get up so early. So you would write early like that. And for how many hours a day do you think you did it? And did you sometimes have to force yourself, or did it just flow every single day?
It never flows every day, but the one concrete tip that I would give aspiring writers, and I had said this before, I'll say it again, I think everybody has a book in them, and I can't wait to read all of the books that come out of the Valley in this conversation today. But one thing that you cannot do is you cannot stop at a chapter ending, because there's nothing worse than staring at the blank page.
Right.
So what I would always do is I would always keep going, and then I would start that next chapter or that next section or whatever it was that I was working on next. And I would start to get into that flow, so I would get excited.
Before quitting.
And then I'd quit, but then I would be excited to come back to it. So I was, oh yeah, I was just going to tell that story. But if I had just finished at like a period and then walked off, then I would have come back to a blank page and gone, uh-oh. So never, that was just something I used. And I can't remember where I heard that from, but I heard that advice from somebody else, and I found it to be extremely helpful.
And then did you have an editor? Did you have a publisher? How did you move into that last phase of it? I'm just picking your brain right now before we go on. I wish we had more time today. We'll just have you back on my show.
I love it here at this station, as you know. So the other thing that you really need to do is get a team. You can't do this by yourself. Not only do you need people, my family has been so wonderful and so supportive, but you need people outside of your family. You need people that don't know you as well. So a lot of my beta readers were Jeff's friends. And of course, they were like, you married somebody that didn't know how to ski? I mean, that's what they said to him. What?
My goodness, because he's so good.
Because it's a huge part of his life. And there's a funny story in there about you don't ski. So get people that don't know you, because sometimes if they know you too well, they just immediately read your personality into it, and you need to be able to reach the reader that doesn't know you.
Right, to make sure it's getting through.
Exactly. And then I had 3 editors. I had a copy editor. I had a really great team. My copy editor is the same editor that works with Tom Wolfe. So Christina's out of New York. There's a lot of really great people that I had to be on New York time zone a lot when I was working on this project. And yeah, it's just, again, really thinking about the customer, about the reader, and
who your audience is.
Yeah, you're not writing, no one writes a book for themselves. They write a book to help people. So if you're going to help people, how do you connect with people?
Kathryn, it's beautiful. Kathryn Guylay's Mountain Mantras. To finish, because we can't, let's not finish unless we're thinking of what's next. So can you give us some wonderful thought that we could end with? It's really a beginning, like your writing style, where as you finish a day of writing, you always end with the beginning for the next day. So what would be an ending for our show today that's a beginning for people out there listening?
Well, I would love to meet listeners face-to-face. There's a couple of events coming up. There's one on October 19th at 6 p.m. at the Haley Community Campus. We've got an event at Iconoclast on the 27th, which is a Tuesday, and that's also at 6 p.m. So come in and hear me talk. I'm going to be giving 10% of the proceeds to the community school this month. Another 10% are always going to Fast and Female, but I've got a rotating list of nonprofits and charities that I'm supporting. So every month there's going to be something associated with those nonprofits. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to meet in person.
Very good. And for those of you who can't make those dates, I recommend so highly to get her book. That's Kathryn Guylay, Mountain Mantras, at Iconoclast, Synergy,
and Chapter 1.
And also on Amazon.
Absolutely.
Kathryn, thank you so much for coming on Talk of the Town.